Well, good morning, everybody. Our first animation here comes from a guy named Brandon. I really want to thank him for showing this video, allowing everyone to use it with permission of this incredible dust storm that hit parts of Kansas. Came out of Colorado last weekend on winds that were 80 to 90 miles an hour coming down slope. We then saw a very sharp cold front that ripped through. And to be honest with you, the rest of the weekend showed some pretty dramatic weather footage. We not only had this dust storm, we had snow squalls in Wyoming, we had extremely heavy rain in parts of Arizona and in parts of California. And then, of course, we've been watching the Mauna Loa eruption, and there was an eruption in Indonesia. So quite a bit to cover. I put some links in today's report of some of the most impressive videos that I saw there. But I want to get back to where this pattern's going to go. So this is today's jet stream level winds. We have a few things. A retracted jet. It doesn't make it all the way across the Pacific Ocean. It comes off Japan, but splits up right here on the Aleutian Islands. We then see this feature here, a deeper trough that's trying to anchor between the west coast. It's a part of the negative P&A pattern, but at this particular moment, it's moved over the Hudson Bay. I'll come back to that in a second. This is the beginning of the Greenland Ridge we spent so much of the last 10 to 15 days talking about. But one of the things that's really kind of put a bit of a kink in the accuracy of the long-range forecasts is the persistence of this larger ridge feature here. And right now, it was that ridge feature that drove those systems over the weekend through California, even hit parts of Arizona, New Mexico. And it's actually going to be this ridge that sets up a very active week for parts of the Mid-South through the Tennessee Valley. Now, the way this pattern will evolve after that is really going to feature two very high amplitude things plus kind of a shifting weakened polar vortex. So let's get to all of that. Over the weekend, our total precipitation map just shows us how the last system came into California. Again, adding fantastic snow here early in the season, but I love to see this building up in the Sierra Nevada, plus some decently heavy rains in parts of the Central Valley. We then saw around that ridge, remember that ridge is in this area, the flow coming out just like this across parts of Arizona. And some places in Arizona picked up 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, and that's quite heavy for this time of year. Much of the rest of the country was drier. As you see, look at the midsection of the United States, all the way down to Texas in the southeast, and there was some scattered rain here as that last system exited. When we take a look, though, at snow departure from normal up to this point in the year, I love showing these maps because it just kind of gives us an idea about what the pattern's been up to, who's been being kept away from the big snow because of the pattern, who's been getting it. So you notice that throughout the west, we're already looking at decent departures from normal that are much above average snowpack, and we're going to continue to see this. I actually watched the European model this morning suggest that maybe 5 systems are going to come into the Pacific Northwest over the next 10 days. They're not overly powerful, but they're coming through. You can continue to see where things have been very dry in parts of the plains because there's not been much snow here either. And we're going to watch that very carefully. But with the new setup in this pattern, it will be delivering more precipitation in the midsection of the country, the mid-south, into the southeast, and then here into New England as well. So let's get into this. As we look back at the temperature pattern for the last 30 days, we've been building quite a deep reservoir of colder air in western Canada, throughout the Canadian Prairie, and all throughout the west. And this has led to what we call a negative P&A pattern at times. That's where the troughs dip in like this. We've had a rather large ridge that's set up here that we've just been talking about. We're going to be watching this pattern evolve as this becomes a more persistent feature going forward, but a large ridge begins to build into Greenland. So the big questions we've all been trying to ask is, when does this cold air get let out in more of kind of a permanent fashion to the eastern United States? And does it set up a very active East Coast storm track? And will this be timed with this polar vortex weakening? Because right now, today, the polar vortex is kind of split into 2 pieces. See the one that's here over parts of Russia? The second one that I'm watching develop is right here, just north of the Hudson Bay. This might be the more dominant feature about 8 to 10 days down the road, really becoming established in this area. And a lot of times with these disturbed polar vortex events, they can line up with the lower atmosphere, the tropospheric trough features, and deliver quite a bit of cold air. So this is what I think might happen over the next 10 days, okay? We keep the retracted Pacific jet. The pattern continues to favor that negative Pacific North American pattern, hence a trough here. But with the large ridge building in the Greenland, we start to see an increase in the activity right into this area, eastern half of the country, with respect to storm systems. This often results in cold air over Europe, this big Greenland block. And the big question we're all going to be answering this week is, how long does this particular blocking feature last? And can the polar vortex, which is disrupted now, somehow sit over the top of it? So let's kind of break this down into a series of maps that just kind of gives us the bigger picture. On the left of this panel, you see the probability of getting less than a tenth of an inch of rain over the next, or tenth of an inch of total precipitation over the next 10 days. So this includes kind of the liquid equivalent. So if there's snow, we would melt that down and call it rain. What we notice here is the Canadian Prairie a bit drier, and also right here in the plains where we've seen extensive drought throughout this summer into fall and now early winter time period. On the right-hand side, I've got the probability of getting greater than an inch of total precipitation. So we can see a large area from the Mid-South, bordering on the Midwest, but getting into the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, up against the Appalachian Mountains that are going to be very, very wet. That's all coming around that larger subtropical ridge, just feeding it. And with all those systems coming into the west, again, really good chances of picking up quite a bit of early winter precipitation here. Now, the temperature side of it, there is some significant model disagreement here, but I'm going to show you the ECMWF in this case today. Over the next 5 days, the persistence of that larger ridge is going to influence the pattern not only over the next 5 days, but probably over the next 7 days. We're going to keep warmer conditions here while the same pattern of colder air continues to stay throughout the Canadian Prairie and West. Now, the European model is much quicker at advancing that cold air farther to the east as we approach day 10. So that would be, out there around the 14th, 15th of the month, maybe even a little earlier. And it's doing that because of the presence of that large ridge, the negative P&A pattern, and the potential for a link up with the stratospheric polar vortex. When we think about snow, this is the probability of getting 3 inches of snow. Now you start to see that throughout the Midwest, these chances are increasing. We expect it over the West, given the negative P&A pattern. But a little bit drier throughout the Canadian Prairie, therefore less chance of seeing some decent snow. But you notice right in through here, these are the best chances we've seen in a while. This is now the probability of getting 6 inches, so there is the chance, and I'll show you how, that we could pick up 50% chance of getting at least 6 inches of snow from Nebraska through Iowa. And then this is the probability of a foot. Now we really see the effect of the mountains in the west. So right now, our all-hazard weather map, we've got winter weather advisories out for parts of the west. This is all fog down here across the southern United States. And we need to see how this pattern is going to evolve. So we're going to go straight to the European model. All right, first system is right now in the west. And you see it diving down. And running around that high-pressure cell here, we have the scattered rain throughout today and then tomorrow for a broad section here of the Mid-South through the east. Now, in Montana, we have a high-pressure cell that's pushing down to the Canadian Prairie. So we're going to shove that air up here into parts of Montana, up into the higher elevation, and we see some chances for snow. See that? This is through Tuesday night into Wednesday. Now, as we play forward, what we've got here is flow coming around this high like this, and that high like that. So this is where the front just sits right in between. And that's partly because of the cold air here, the subtropical ridge to the south. That's where the action is. It's right where that temperature gradient sits. So this is Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon and evening, playing into Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon and evening. We're going to be watching late this week for a low. Let me take you back there. Coming out of Arizona, New Mexico, pulling through parts of Oklahoma and Texas, and then emerging Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday afternoon and evening, possibly right here in the Midwest. Now, the GFS does not have this system in the same position. I'm showing you only the European, and we're rocking back and forth here on Thursday into Friday. And you can see where there might be some heavy snow out of this. The third system is pulling into the northwest as this one right here moves over Ohio and then possibly delivers storms into parts of the snow into parts of the mid-Atlantic. Now, that's pretty far out, given how volatile this pattern is, but we're going to have to watch it. Now, the next system comes diving down. This would be this weekend, so watch it again. Friday into Saturday. Watch that come into the Pacific Northwest. I'm just rocking back and forth over Friday and Saturday. And then as we go from Saturday night into Sunday morning, another low pulls out of the southern plains of the United States. You notice how hard it is to deliver the moisture back farther to the west. And even though the snow will build into the mountains, because these systems are coming in like this, it's not the same setup as just that straight flow out of the west, which can really pack up the mountains full of snow. But early next week, we have to be on the lookout for another low going from the Red River Valley to the Ohio River Valley, right in through here. So I told you, very active pattern in the models, high amplitude flow, and the temperatures are going to respond to that as well. Now, because of that large protective southeast ridge, we're going to delay throughout this week the extent of this really cold air. So I just showed you Monday. This is now Tuesday's temperatures, getting into Wednesday, and Thursday. So what did we notice here? The colder air stays anchored west and north. We just don't break through it here in the midsection of the country. Going into Friday and Saturday and Sunday, it's a persistent feature, cold west, warm east. But as you saw earlier, we do expect, where was it? There we go. We do expect that to get let out into week 2. We're going to have to watch that very carefully. Now, the models are not fully in agreement with this. Let me show you the difference here. This is the GFS. You notice that the GFS very mild over the next 5 days, and it keeps it there day 5 through 10. It's day 10 through 15 that the GFS really starts to let that colder out, which is a little bit later than the European model. So let's just stay on top of this. Okay, at the same time, that big Greenland ridge will also likely affect more troughing over much of Europe. So we now see the 10-day forecast over Europe considerably cooler. You now see that it's only parts of the Iberian Peninsula that in and around the Black Sea where temperatures might still maintain above normal conditions. So this is what we could expect to see more throughout December given this pattern. Okay, last little bit here on South America, then we'll wrap this up. The new 1-month standard precipitation index data giving us ideas about drought now shows what we talked about a lot over the last couple of weeks. There were pockets, for example, in Mato Grosso do Sul and eastern Mato Grosso that were dry over the last month. We talked about how if the rains did not return here in December, that this could start to cause some yield issues. Now understand, even though that it was dry in here, there was still precipitation, and over that month, some places saw 2 inches of rainfall. So it wasn't as though it was completely dry. There was just drier than normal. Well, the new forecast suggests that near normal temperatures in Mato Grosso do Sul, still hot into Argentina, but watch the precipitation fill in here. As we play through this week, getting out toward the weekend, we got very normal precipitation pattern here throughout Mato Grosso do Sul over to eastern Brazil. Still a bit drier in Paraguay and Rio Grande do Sul. And we're going to watch this weekend as the heat's still on for this front to try to slide through that heat, delivering some rain right there into Argentina. There's going to be a lot of scattered storms on this, which means the drought issues there are going to continue. And once again, the model just continues to put down quite a bit of rainfall in the corridor it normally does. And between those two arrows, we could be looking at 4+ inches of rainfall over the next 10 days, which brings the moisture back and gets them back on track for what could be a very large crop in Brazil. The risk is in drought in Argentina. Okay, I look forward to talking to you again tonight, and we'll get you that new long-range forecast because we'll have new seasonal ECMWF data to discuss. So talk to you soon. Thanks.